Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock. I'm calling to order the PPACG Board of Directors meeting for April 12th, 2023. Mr. Andy, can we establish a quorum?
Certainly. What I would suggest is we go around the room with introductions. We need, remind me, 7 for quorum. I'm sorry. And it looks like we have that in the room already, but why don't we do introductions?
Okay, we'll start to your left.
Sure.
John Graham, Manitou Spring.
Roland Gardine, Mayor Pro Tem, Town Callahan.
Todd Dixon, Mayor, Green Mountain Falls.
Mitchell Kine, Mayor of Monument.
Nancy Hencham, City Council, District 5.
Wait,
Colorado Springs, sorry.
Blant Havener, Mayor of Palmer Lake.
Jeff Mosier, City of Cripple Creek.
Yolanda.
Yolanda Avila, City.
Sharon Thompson, Mayor, Fountain City Council.
Dick Elsner, Commissioner, Park County.
Okay, and elected officials online.
Mayor Thompson, we have, looks like one board member online, Shannon Walker from RAMA.
Okay. All righty. So let me count up here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think I got 7. Probably didn't count myself. And probably didn't count myself and okay. All right.
Yes, we're easily had a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. Okay, yep, it helps if you count yourself and the person next to you. So, okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. That takes us on to the agenda approval, item number 2. What would council? Let me stop. Yeah, we had council last night, so what would the board like to do with the agenda approval?
Second, Mayor Todd Dixon.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the agenda. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, seeing none, that takes us on to item 3, public comments and presentation. Public comments can be made before or after the meeting. Public comments during the meeting is limited to 3 minutes and can be done at the meeting location or remotely. Do we have anyone in the audience for public comments? Jody, are you coming up for public? Okay, he was moving at the wrong time. Yeah, everybody. All right, do we have anyone online for public comments?
Mayor Thompson, we haven't received any comments before the meeting, and unless anyone in the listen only mode would like to raise their hand and let us know that they would like to comment, we have not heard any request for public comment.
Okay, we'll just continue moving forward then. Under public comment, we have also B, military installation reports. Do we have any military installations online that would like to comment at this time?
Madam Chair, it appears we have Colonel Udarian online. I don't know if they're able to unmute or if they were planning to provide a comment, but that's the only person, at least online, who looks like they're from a military installation.
Okay. Well, if anybody comes on a little bit later, we can always come back to that.
But it looks like the Colonel's coming on.
Okay, great. Welcome, Colonel.
Yes. Good morning, 10th Air Base Wing Vice Commander. Just want to let everyone know construction around the Northgate area continues. And so just from a community perspective, encouraging folks to use the Southgate because at various times the traffic flow at the Northgate will be impacted. Wing Commander is changing over here in July and our Command Chief departs here next month. So a little bit of changeover in leadership. And of course, graduation is 1 June and still awaiting speaker confirmation. That's all I have for the group. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. And congratulations to all those graduates coming up. Okay. We also have item C, Older Americans Month proclamation. Mr. Barker.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Directors. It's my privilege to stand before you today to read this resolution for recognizing Older Americans Month, which is the month of May. We're not bringing this to you next month because we'd be halfway through the month. So we thought we'd get a jump start on that. So if it's all right, I will go ahead and read this for the board. This is a resolution by the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors recognizing May 2023 as Older Americans Month, April 12th, 2023. Whereas the Pikes Peak region includes a growing number of older Americans who have built resilience and strength over their lives through successes and difficulties. And whereas the Pikes Peak region benefits when people of all ages, abilities and backgrounds are included and encouraged to share their success and stories of resilience. And whereas the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments recognizes our need to nurture ourselves, reinforce our strength, and continue to thrive in times of both joy and difficulty. And whereas the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments and the Area Agency on Aging can foster communities of strength by creating opportunities to share stories and learn from each other, emphasize the many positive aspects of aging, inspire older adults to push past traditional boundaries, explore innovation in nutrition and transit services for our region, and embrace our community's diversity. Now be it therefore resolved, the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments recognizes May as Older Americans Month 2023 and the theme Aging Unbound. Resolved, approved, and adopted by the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments this 12th day of April 2023 at Colorado Springs, Colorado. Signed Sharon Thompson, Chair, and Mr. Dave Donaldson, Secretary. With that, I would ask if you have any questions for me or an approval to pass this resolution.
Okay, are there any questions or discussion for Mr. Barker? Okay, what would the board like to do with the resolution?
I'd move to approve the resolution.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second John Graham.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. All right, thank you very much. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. We'll have these signatures placed on this and shared. May we have a quick photograph with you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You want everybody? Whoever'd like to be-
Okay.
Looks good.
Whoever'd like to be
Okay.
in the photo, come on down.
Yeah, why don't we get everybody in person there? Yeah.
We're going to back up for just a moment to the military installation reports. Mr. Bond joined us. Please go ahead and share anything that's going on at where you're at.
I'm Jeff Bond with, I'm the new Community Partnership Manager for Space Base Delta One. I'm representing Colonel David Hansen at this meeting, and I would like to let the floor know that we are going to be conducting an East Gate construction project that is going to start about April 23rd and run for about 3 months. This is going to have an impact on Mark Shuffle Road. We've taken some precautions with city and county roads folks as well to ensure that this is as seamless as possible and reduces any traffic hazards as we use the old East Gate that is just south of the current East Gate. Pending your questions, that's all I have to report today.
All right, thank you very much and good luck on that.
Thank you.
A lot of growth going on out that way, so you need to anticipate it. All right, that takes us on to item 4, consent items. We have consent items A, B, C, and D. Pending anyone wanting to pull anything off, these will all be acted on as a whole. What would the board like to do with the consent items?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On the consent items, does that include the minutes or that separately?
Yes, the minutes are item A, approval of the minutes from the March 8th meeting.
It has a
Okay, why don't we go ahead and pull off item A temporarily, and we can come back to that while someone checks it out. Does that work? Okay, so we're going to pull item A off consent. We will come back. We will take that down to 5 and put it on for 5B under action. Does that work, Andy?
Sure.
And give everybody a minute just to look that over. So we have consent items B, C, and D. What would the board like to do with those items?
I move approval of items 4B through D. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second under consent items for B through D. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. And that takes us to item 5, action items. We have item 5A, legislative update. Mr. Liasatos.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Directors. For the legislative update, I think last time we sort of gave you an overview of sort of the process and how we would run through it. And at this point, we're knee deep into the session, and we probably will, for this particular update, we're going to focus more on some of the different positions. We have co-chairs. Mayor Dixon is here, and he'll probably hop on and chat quite a bit. I know Commissioner Stone is the other co-chair, and I know he was having problems with his voice, so I don't know if he's on, and if he is, he may just be typing. But those are our two co-chairs, and will join us. And then Mayor
Mr.
Thompson.
Stone just texted me, said he's not feeling well, so he won't be here.
Well, see, I'm on top of these things. I knew he was not feeling well. And then, of course, Mayor Thompson, you have been very involved in all of these issues as well. Additionally, we have our lobbyist, Dan Jablan, is on the line. So if we can let Dan turn his camera on and have access to his mic. Quite frankly, it's better to spend the time having Dan chime in on some of these things than me, since he's the expert and he's knee deep there. In addition to what was in your packet, we sent out an updated tracking list of the different positions on Monday, asked for any input on the different positions. So at this point, I'd like to sort of open it up. I think the bills of interest is we have the clean energy, the wildfire resilient different programs. And then we have the land use, which I think is the big one. And if you've been reading the paper, I probably don't need to update you all on that. So with that, Mayor Dixon, would you like to say anything, or have Dan chime in on anything particular?
I would say go ahead and have Dan chime in. You know, we meet every week to go over these bills, and we try to come up with positions. And if there's something that appears to be a little contentious, we try to take it in front of the body.
So with that, Dan, are you there?
I am here. I am in a phone booth around the corner from the Senate. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
And just be careful when you get out of the phone booth. Don't let your cape get stuck in the door again.
Yeah.
So we saw that there was an article that I'm going to get the name wrong, the League of Mayors or whatever, came out yesterday in opposition of the land use bill. Yep. So is there anything else on the land use bill that you want to update folks on?
No, I would just say if it does get to the finish line, it's going to look considerably different than it is now. As I told, I think, the legislative board yesterday or Monday, that I was on a call with the governor's office. The governor's office is working on amendments. The bill sponsor is working on amendments. The opponents are working on amendments. So I think it's got a tremendously long way to go, and we're going to have to see how it looks when it gets to the finish line. But it's still ultimately always going to be about state control versus local control. And I don't know that they can amend it to fix that at all to our satisfaction. So I think that's where that's at, but it's got a lot of work and a long way to go.
Right, and thank you. And yes, for the members of the board. Oh, excuse me, Mayor Dixon, go ahead.
Yeah, Dan, in that bill, was there an estimate for what it may cost folks to do the reporting? I thought I remembered something from our meeting.
I think from our meeting, someone said it was $30,000, but I'll check the fiscal note on that and the thing. But I think I remember the number 30,000 from our meeting on Monday, somebody said, but I'll check.
Because yeah, that would definitely make a difference, at least for my small community, into where we may join in on some of the opposing.
And are we watching the sister bill to go with it? And are we watching 1190? Because they all kind of tie in together.
So we did not take a formal position on 1255, I don't believe. And the other one you said?
1190, the right of first refusal that went through the House, right of first refusal.
Yeah, so that doesn't fall under our PPACG wheelhouse. That would be something that you'd have to take a stand on as you
I get
say.
it. I get that it doesn't, but to me, all of those bills have to do with state control versus local control.
I agree.
And all of those have to do with our land use. And all of those have to do with taking things via eminent domain for affordable housing. They all are tied in together, all three of those bills. So I get that we're taking a position on 2313, but all three of those bills together are a package that are, disastrous for local government.
Commissioner Elsner?
A couple of the bills, when you say disastrous, I'm not so sure that's true. The right of first refusal is one that has been used very successfully in other counties. I was appointed to NACO, which is the National Association of Counties Task Force on Affordable Housing. There's 30 members from across the U.S. that are on that. Right of first refusal was one of the items that was brought up. The way the bill is written, it is not eminent domain. It does not limit anybody's right. So as far as this group taking a position, I would be strongly opposed to any other position other than let's just let them decide what they want to do. That is a good bill.
Okay, back to 213. I was the one that, I'm just going to gracefully step out of that. No, not gracefully. Back to 213. Since that is one that we did take a position on. I was the one that brought it up at the meeting. The fiscal note was approximately estimated $30,000 the first year for municipalities for the reporting, and then $125,000 every 5 years after that to just do their reports. And so that would be, and I kind of went off on our council last night. So if anybody's interested in when our YouTube's up, you can kind of watch me go off there. This has huge impacts for our community. It is huge government overreach. And we did take a position on it, though, on a very specific part of the bill, because like we said, the entire land use doesn't fall into it. And so the portion that John, could you explain the portion that we did take a position on was with the transportation?
Yes. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, if you trudge through the very, very long bill, I think approximately page 104, it touches on section 18, which says that if a region's transportation plan, and that does not restrict it to MPOs, that's also TPRs. So either a TPR or an MPO transportation plan that feeds up into the statewide plan. It states that if it does not include the smart or the growth strategies, have a little trouble getting my words out there. If it does not include those strategies, that the Transportation Commission is not to approve it. So we held that out as akin to again saying if we don't do exactly what they do, how they want it to be done, our federal transportation dollars could be withheld. Not sure that is something that needed to be in there, especially since under the greenhouse gas provisions that we just spent 2 years going through, a lot of those greenhouse gas provisions are very similar to what they're doing here. So it's again, sort of piling on without any very specific a path forward, because when these strategies that they are talking about are to be given to us at a later date. And that is the issue. Basically, we're going to club you if you don't do what we want you to do. Well, what do you want us to do? Well, we're not going to tell you yet. So.
Commissioner Elsner?
Yeah, and I'm on the Colorado Water Congress State Affairs, and we took this up into discussion Monday, and where, you know, they're kind of like us, this little piece, they took an opposed position to the bill because of some of the implications on water and how it would be set up. So they were, it was unanimous that they think that's a terrible bill, and they went in opposition too.
Anything else on 213? I did want to hit on, oh, yes, Madam Chair.
Dan, someone texted me this morning and said they thought it would be in committee on the 18th. Do you know anything about that? That's when they would be introducing the
I will confirm it.
amendments.
I will confirm it one way or the other, and then I will send an email to John or a text to John so we can get it out to you guys, but I will confirm that today.
Okay.
Okay. And if we have time, Madam Chair, I know we have a lot of mountain communities that are interested in some of the different fire resiliency bills. And more specifically, Dan, and I apologize, I don't have the number.
1273.
1273, and I think that's the one with Senator Exum is one of the
that's
sponsors.
Senate Bill 166 is what you're talking about then.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more concern on that one because it establishes a board, and then that board it is one step away from putting in some mandates. So I think from our mountain communities, Green Mountain Falls and others, there's concern there. Is that bill still moving? Has there been any amendments to soften that, or does it still?
It hasn't softened that yet. It passed Senate appropriations yesterday. It's not scheduled on the floor today. I do know that they're, including the bill sponsor, are looking at some amendments, and some of them are in the makeup of the board as well. I know that the architects are trying to get a member on the board, but I think most of the amendments are surrounding the board makeup. But it has not been calendared. It's not on the calendar today. It could be on the calendar tomorrow, but it did pass Senate appropriations yesterday.
Mayor Dixon, did you want to speak to some of our concerns with 166?
Just disappointment, basically. We went through a lot of effort up in Green Mountain Falls, 2 years and tens of thousands of dollars to redo our land use code and actually include wildland urban interface sections in it, but we had to use the word applicable because we go from it, even in our small valley, we have flat floodplain to near vertical and rock. And we also have houses that are basically 20 feet away from each other. And that doesn't play well with the full international wildland urban interface. So you have to kind of go in and pick and choose what makes sense for each parcel. And my concern is that they're going to say, okay, extreme risk areas, here's your requirements, and I'm going to have to be in front of a board trying to say, here's why that doesn't make sense, folks. And it's just, yeah, it's disappointing.
And it's going to affect insurance rates as well in our area.
Could you turn your mic on so people online can hear you?
Also going to highly affect insurance rates and ISO ratings in our two areas because of the 20-foot and the setbacks between homes.
Right. So we are recommending, and right now we're in amend position on that.
Yes, right now we're in amend. I did testify on that with some language where I was hoping they would maybe consider just basically looking at doing a study to see where basically get the state of the state and then maybe come up with, a list of recommendations. I think that was a PPACG's position on that. And yeah, I think it just went in one ear and out the other. The guy who was testifying with me was the architect, and they latched on to, hey, we need an architect on the board. And I could tell at the time it just went in whatever I said went in one ear and out the other.
So the amend position we're at is that it be turned into recommendations, not
Guidelines.
mandates and guidelines.
Basically. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to add on this bill, as all of the bills, there's about 350 bills in the orbit right now with I heard yesterday as many as 50 or 60. Most of them, the governor's priority bills will be dropped with like 27 days to go. And I think it's important to remember for the last 13 days, the House has passed 13 bills. So they're going to have to start picking and choosing, I think, in the next couple of weeks or so. Any bill that hasn't been done, there's going to be a lot of horse trading. So I think that this is one of those bills. I think the longer we can stall it out, it could be a victim of the clock. As could almost anything at this point. So I just want to make sure everyone understands the environment down here. And the environment is that if there's 350 bills, with let's say even conservatively 40 more coming, almost 400 bills. I mean, to get another 400 bills through this building at the pace that these bills are moving is impossible. So I think we have to keep that in mind as we move forward and look at our bills as well.
And with that, Madam Chair, if there's any bill that anybody wants to ask Dan on, we've got him here, and I think the agenda will allow for a few more minutes.
Yes.
Are there any questions for Dan?
Any changes in strategy for the legislative committee?
This is the time of year for the last 2 to 3 weeks, the legislative committee may be getting calls and we may be having to change positions and meet quickly as things drop. You'll be getting emails and we will literally need people to, if they don't agree with it, respond back within 24 hours because we'll be pushing those positions through very, very quickly. So if there's a bill that pops in your sphere of influence or information, and it falls within our PPACG legislative guidelines. And if you don't have one of those flyers, we've got plenty of them around here that we can get to everybody today. Please send it to Mayor Dixon or to John, and we will get those out to look at them and get them out as quickly as possible because things are just, I think there was like yesterday morning, 5:30 in the morning, 5 bills dropped. So things are moving really, really quickly. So any more questions for Dan or John? Or the committee?
And just on that point, Madam Chair, appreciate you bringing that up. Be on the lookout for high priority emails. I think they'll be coming from Jared primarily, correct, on the 24-hour notice. We need your feedback within 24 hours. If you have an objection to the position that the legislative committee has taken, we have a few new members. So if we don't hear back within 24 hours and the position that was taken by the committee, support, oppose, amend, is going to stand, and that's what Dan's going to run with. So just be on the lookout for those.
And we probably ought to put priority in the subject line.
Yep, we'll do.
And the board, and we meet Mondays at 8:30 Zoom. So if you anybody that wants to come, please drop in. And this has been a great discussion this morning. I can tell we're all really passionate about what's going on. And I really, really appreciate that because you know what, you go home and they're not quite as passionate as we are, are they?
And then, and if there's another air quality bill dropping or ozone?
Yes, sir. Yes, there is.
Yeah, it's a big one. We just got it yesterday as a draft, and I don't know that there's a bill number on it yet.
There is not.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, so we'll dig into it. Our air quality contractor, Dean Wojtak, has been looking at it as well. It may, hopefully, fingers crossed, primarily impact existing non-attainment areas, but that could impact us here in the coming years as well. But yeah, we'll dig into that and we'll talk about it with the committee on Monday.
And one thing I'll just add is, as I said, things are moving very quickly and then they stop when they hit the House. But if we get a position change or a question and it's during today, let's don't wait until the next Monday meeting. So John, Mayor Dixon, text me immediately as to what you guys need from me, because this is pretty much where I live right now. So I'll be here. So just text me immediately if we have a change of position or our strategy.
So you're living in the phone booth off the Senate floor?
Well, I have a little blue tent on 14th and Colfax, but I'm close by.
Right.
Well, and I have one more comment on this. This is Commissioner Williams on the establishment of a wildfire resiliency code board. If we can't get that to a study, do we want to oppose it?
Mayor Dixon.
I would personally love to oppose it, but I'm not sure if that would actually get us anywhere with the stage that it's in.
Okay.
I think, trying, maybe to keep trying to push for some kind of amendment to make it more palatable.
This is Councilman Donaldson. What about the position oppose unless amended? How-
Like I say, personally, I'd love to just oppose the thing because for my little town, if it goes through, I'm gonna be camped up in Denver trying to convince a board that what we have is okay.
So Dan, that brings up an interesting question. You guys as lobbyists have a spreadsheet, right? That you have or a database that you go into, and there's a little drop-down menu where you select support, oppose, or amend. Are there other options like amend unless? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's support, oppose, amend, and monitor are the four choices we have to register PPACG and myself. I go in under PPACG and put our position, but those are my four choices.
And you've expressed in the past that amend is a position to keep you at the table with them hopefully being willing to listen to you. And then we can always change it to to oppose.
You bet. If they stop listening, we can just go right to opposed.
But our position is really oppose unless amended, but you have to pick one of those boxes.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, most legislators look at people with an amended position as an opposed position down here now.
Interesting.
I guess that speaks of how poorly they're doing this year.
So yeah, if we want to change our position on that to oppose, I mean, that suits me just fine.
Me too.
Three.
Would you like to turn that into a formal motion?
I so move.
So
And
I move that, this is Mayor Dixon, I move that we change our position on Senate Bill 23-166, establishment of a wildfire resiliency code board from amend to oppose.
Second.
can we have a motion and a second on one of the items on the legislative item 166 to oppose? Is there any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, and we're only voting on that one item. Okay, all in favor of changing from amend to oppose, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, so we have changed that position. So that takes us back to the rest of the legislative positions that are in your packet. Do you need a minute to look some of them over? Okay, what would the board like to do with these with this item?
I move we support item 5A as amended.
Okay, we have a motion to support as amended. Do we have a second? We have a second by Councilwoman Avila. So we have a motion and a second to accept as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, thank
All
you
right,
very
well,
much.
Thank you very much. And thanks for joining us, Dan. Go back and fight the good fight for us. And go ahead. You heard it here first. Go ahead and
Yep.
change the little clicky drop down box to oppose for us.
I'm on it. Thank you guys very much for your time today.
All right, thank you, everybody, for the great discussion. Really, really appreciate it. Tough things going on. Okay, that takes us on item 5B, which we changed, which we pulled off the consent of approval of the minutes. Mr. Gunning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't see a reference to Commissioner Vanderwerf in there. You were thinking, Councilmember Avila, that you, we show Chair Sharon Thompson adjourned at 10:58 and that she convened us. So she was there from start to finish. Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
No, I appreciate
We're
that.
good.
Thank you very much. Okay. So with that information, what would the board like to do with item 5B, the minutes from the previous meeting?
Commissioner Williams, move approval.
John Graham, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, and that takes us on to item 6, information items. We have item A, long-term care workforce planning / jumpstart the aging workforce solutions curriculum. Mr. Barker.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the board. It's my pleasure to introduce Penny Whitney, who is the owner and president of Pony Partners, Inc. She has over 25 years of experience in various aspects of organizational facilitation and high-performing team leadership development. Penny currently serves as co-chair for the Colorado Direct Care Workforce Collaboration and was appointed by the governor to the Colorado Commission on Aging in 2022. Penny also participated in the long-term care roundtables that were hosted here by our long-term care ombudsman staff last year. Penny's current professional focusing includes 2 ARPA-funded projects, JAWS, which stands for Jumpstart Aging Workforce Solutions, and the Direct Care Standardized Curriculum 1.03. We're so glad to have her here today to share more about these projects to ultimately support our seniors in long-term care and receiving direct care to live safely at home and in their community. Penny, it's all yours.
Jody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the PPACG board for the opportunity to brief you on one particular project this morning. That's JAWS, Jumpstart Aging Workforce Solutions. JAWS is an ARPA project that was granted. It's a grant that was awarded to UCCS, and Pony Partners is a subrecipient to UCCS. The 3 primary leads for JAWS, our charge is to create a community model to recruit and retain long-term care workforce. Project leads include Judy Scott, who is PhD RN from UCCS, Lynn Phillips, also PhD RN and the director of the Simulation Center at UCCS. And then I bring to the table the experience with long-term care providers mostly. And here we go, Jared. There we go. So how did we get to JAWS? Basically now, the pandemic is almost becoming a historic reflection process, but it was in the heat of 2021 that a group came together at UCCS and said, as a community, we need to address what's happening in long-term care, particularly the workforce. And what prompted that was the fact that at that time, 7 nursing homes in the state of Colorado had closed primarily because of workforce issues. 4 of those were in El Paso County. And that was really the impetus to figure out how can we bring together a community team to address this problem. COVID did not create the workforce challenge in long-term care. It was long before, but it just sort of went along under the surface. What COVID did was shined a bright light and brought it to each of our television screens every single evening. It's important to know that Colorado is an important undergirding for focus on long-term care workforce. It's not just a Colorado problem, an El Paso County problem. It's a national problem. But why Colorado? Colorado is consistently identified as one of the top 3 fastest aging states. We know that by 2030, we're going to see a growth in our 65 plus population of at least 49%. But perhaps the most sobering statistic of all is that 70% of us sitting here sometime during our aging process will need the support of long-term care services. Could be home health, could be assisted living, could be skilled nursing, could be hospice care. But the probability that the majority of citizens, as they age, will need long-term care services is a reality. But on the flip side, we have a growing business sector. There are incredible career opportunities available in long-term care. How do we showcase those? How do we get people to participate? And how do we get long-term care to be at the community table for discussion? And that really was the groundwork for establishing JAWS. This public-private partnership pilot opportunity has basically 4 buckets that we have addressed and we will address. One was, how do we figure out what really our community needs are? So from July through probably January of last year, January this year, we convened 3 listening sessions, one with long-term care providers, the leaders in our community. What's it look like from a business standpoint? Then we convened educators, not only the UCCS interdisciplinary education team, but K through 12. And probably the most important addition to education was a young man, Jordan Whittingham, who is part of the Colorado Community College system that oversees the career and technical education programs. Jordan came not knowing what to expect, and he said, Penny, we've got 13 CTE, career technical education programs, actively going in El Paso County. Let's figure out a way how we partner those schools, high school programs with long-term care providers. Part of the exciting to come. Then we also convened community partners. PPACG, AAA were at that particular table. Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, the Mount Carmel represented. What are the needs and what can you contribute? So we've done that work. Our advocacy stake in the ground was held March 2nd. We had our first JAWS, a community conversation for long-term care, held at UCCS. We had no idea what to expect, who would come. We had over 140 registered for that particular 3-hour convening at UCCS. We had community college students, we had university students, we had K through 12 educators, we had over 25 community partners representing long-term care providers and community service providers. Students had the opportunity of learning more, talking one-on-one with long-term care. That leads us to bucket 3. Out of that convening, we now have UCCS actively pursuing a summer internship for 6 students that before March 2nd had never thought of long-term care as a career possibility. 6 of these students came forward after the convening on March 2nd and said, I think I'd be willing to accept an opportunity to learn about long-term care. Next Friday, April 20th, we're convening long-term care leaders and the CTE education, and we're going to frame out our first 15-hour Welcome to Long-Term Care pilot. We hope to have that at least doing a pilot in one school before the end of the school year, and hopefully some that will continue through the summer. And then we're going to develop a second pilot looking at volunteering. Also out of the March 2nd, we had probably the most two remarkable things. We had the Salvation Army say, we've got people that go through our service programs. We never thought of long-term care as a possible career destination. How can we partner? We had Mount Carmel say, we have a veteran, 86 years old, saying, I do not want to go to my next stop sitting before a television. How can you help me be value in my community? That is the energy that came from March 2nd. And so now we're working to put all of those pieces together. This is a picture of March 2nd. There were 2 compelling components. Number 1 was Cammie Bremer. She was our introductory speaker. The passion Cammie has bringing community sense of urgency, and her own personal experience in long-term care was compelling. Students and community members were riveted. Her voice made a difference. We also brought in as a keynote speaker a young 20-something caregiver of the year from New York City. When Jonas talked, he went from a career pathway in film to CNA program, and now he's an administrator in training because of his grandmother's experience in long-term care. He said, I want to make a difference. For those 6 students that said, I'm ready to do an internship in long-term care, Jonas made the difference, because what Jonas brought to the table was the power of long-term care is caring about people. One of his quotes will linger with me probably forever. Long-term care is not a place. Long-term care is a caring community. So JAWS has had lots of success. We've got action steps that we're ready to move forward. But as we look at the conclusion of our El Paso County grant in 2024, we need to actively start looking at how do we develop a sustainability plan, because finding a model to recruit and retain long-term care workforce, I think we're making strong initial steps, but 2 years is not going to take us to the goal. So one of the things I would like to leave you with today, I would like to continue to work carefully with this body and your constituents to figure out how we collectively, as a community, put together a sustainability plan that will help El Paso County lead the way for our state for recruiting and retaining the necessary long-term care workforce. So thank you for your time this morning. I look forward to working with you, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
very much. Great presentation. Does anybody have any questions for her?
Yeah, I do.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardine?
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Roland Gardine. Okay, Callahan is actually a regional hub for El Paso County. We don't have facilities for long-term care. We have in-home care. I
And
don't
that's
see
the point.
anything on there about in-home care.
Absolutely. Home health is an absolutely critical part. And I spoke with you earlier, I think, at the long-term care roundtable. And that is where in communities like Calhan, we've got something to learn from you. What's the role of churches? What's the role of community organizations? I think one of the things that we could collaborate on is how do we communicate opportunities to young people? But it's not just young people, older. I mean, you don't have to be 65 to be considered older. So we welcome, this is an El Paso County grant. So the more we can embrace and have your voices at the table, the more effective the whole grant will be. So
Well,
help me figure out how we can do that.
I think one of the main keys is you may not have a third-party individual do the in-home care. You may have a related person.
Yep.
Help this person, okay? So, but they have limited abilities are actually resources to go to be trained. And I think this needs to be addressed.
Well, and that might segue into the other project I'm working on. It's the home health curriculum. The ARPA number, the state ARPA number is 103. But UCCS was identified as the partner to develop a long-term care in-home home health curriculum that will be available free of charge. And if you would like to continue to be updated on that, love to do it, because you're absolutely right. That is, and we know that that's going to be a growing part of providing long-term care
I
services.
definitely need that information. Okay. Thank you.
And so maybe what we could do is I would love to come and just brief the identified people on what's happening and the information and so that you know how the project's going forward.
That'd be outstanding. Thank you.
Okay. And actually, we're looking for pilot sites. We might find that there is an opportunity for a pilot site in Callahan.
Bring it on.
Okay, cool. We'll do it.
Commissioner Bremer has her hand raised online.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. And Penny, sorry, well, to all of you, sorry that I am only on the phone today, but thank you for being there. You know, as for my colleagues on the PPACG board, as El Paso County was looking at how to make that sudden influx of an awful lot of ARPA dollars go as far as we could for very strategic long-term needs for our entire community, including Cowhan and Rama and the areas that don't get a lot of attention because they're not municipalities. This was one of the programs and ways we decided we could really have a no pun intended, but a long-term impact with that sudden influx of dollars to our region. So I look forward to seeing the actual work come to fruition, and Penny and everybody's done a great job. I'm glad that she and Jody and others have connected with AAA and so many others. And just great work. I look forward to seeing, you know, the increased numbers in the future of people we have choosing to go into this career field. And I actually think that this could end up being somewhat of a model for other workforce development areas or other issues that we as our community's leaders identify. How can we make long-term investments in something that's going to have an impact on the region for a really long time, with attention to specific audiences, ages, populations, and areas geographically. So great work.
Thanks, Cammie. And again, I cannot thank you enough for the energy that you brought on March 2nd, because you made a difference in decision-making process for a number of students. So look forward to working with you.
I have one more thing. I want to tell Jody Barker, thank you very much for helping the pantry like you did, and in our area, but we need still more communication. We need men to know where men can actually access these type of information and facilities. Okay, so there's quite a bit of work to be done yet. So, okay.
So if after the meeting, I would love to get a next step set with you and anybody else that sees a particular community interest. That is part of what the grant is hoping that we will accomplish. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you very much, Penny. Thank you for being here. And just to the board of directors, we do have a carve out of ARPA funds specifically that came through the Administration on Community Living for public health support. We will be contracting with Pikes Peak State College, sorry, still trip over that one. Pikes Peak State College, previously Community College, to fund CNA scholarships with these funds. We're very excited about that possibility and that opportunity that we have. It's not a whole lot of money, but we were allowed to use it specifically for that. So we're in midst of discussions, learning all about how that operates, but we will be in contract with them to distribute those funds that way. That is a very specific public health carve out from our ARPA fund. So thank you very much. PPAAA staff, as you know, has been involved in the long-term care community and conversations, and we are participating with the JAWS program. So more to come. We're very excited that we get to be part of that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
On those scholarship I'm hoping they're going to be offered at both campuses. There is not an easy way if they're down south to get up north, or up north to get down south. So, or offered online. So I think that could be a big deciding factor for people.
I will
to take
keep
those
that in
classes.
mind. Thank you. Yes, we haven't gotten into that specific. What we have had in discussion is how best to use the funds as scholarship opportunities because of their experience in scholarship funding. They have some very specific recommendations as to how those are used. So far, nothing that would not allow us to use those funds, but instead of 100% funding, for example, they have recommendations for ownership of the program by the individual and that kind of thing. So a lot of conversations going on right now, but our hope is to make sure that folks who are interested in these type of programs, even if it's a step towards greater education, that they have a foot in the door with these funds, with these scholarships.
I just wouldn't want a transportation to be one of the factors because they
That's
couldn't get
always
to
in the
it,
back
so-
of our minds too. So yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any other questions from anybody on the board?
Yeah, Madam Chair, one question. Hey, Jody, do you know the difference between an MA and a CNA, what the qualification difference is or what they can do?
I don't know the.
And for those, those here, I mean, you probably don't know what the hell those two things are. MA is a medical assistant and a CNA certified nursing assistant, right?
Correct. Yeah.
What's the qualification? What can they do that's
Yeah, I
different?
don't know the answer to
Okay.
that. I know that you are in the medical field, so.
Yep, we used to hire
perhaps
MAs.
Yeah. So the CNA though is typically able to be hired into both long-term care communities as well as higher levels within the Class B and lower levels of Class A home care agencies. Class A licensed home care agencies can also include nursing care, direct nursing care. But the Class B license are primarily the non-medical home care agency. So becoming a CNA gives an individual options when it comes to serving our community.
And I would just say that, especially in, say, retirement facilities, my father, he had Alzheimer's. He was in a memory care unit. It's hard work for the staff there. It's physically hard and emotionally hard. And I think, one side of this is to get people on to go into that field, but pay is important in keeping them there. And without that, I mean, I think we can drive people into it, but when they get in there and they're earning, a minimum wage or close to minimum wage, and they're lifting people off of beds and bathing them and changing their diapers and doing this stuff, it's a challenge. And like other fields, it may be that the salary or the pay needs to increase to keep them. So my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other questions?
One last, Yolanda?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. And Jody, I'm really glad to hear that you're partnering with Pikes Peak State College. Actually, my granddaughter just finished a CNA program and is now in the nursing program there. And one of her clinics is working at a nursing home and helping that out. And she really enjoys it. She does really enjoy it. I don't know where she's going to end up. But and it is a lot of hard work, and she doesn't see it as hard work. She has 3 little ones that she carries on each side and carries a diaper bag and just everything. So she's little petite, but she's pretty mighty and strong. And so I'm really glad to hear about that. And there's another organization that's in Southeast, and they are graduating. I think they've had to double they're going to get more CNA students. But they're thriving. I think it's called Heart to Heart. And I don't know if you're partnering with them, but I think that would be great too, because they're putting out those graduates.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
I toured Myron Stratton Home last week, and they are looking to hire CNAs, and I believe they have a program where they help with scholarships for people that are working.
Oh, that's great
towards
to
that.
know.
We might make sure they're on your list.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Madam Chair, I'll just mention, just got a couple of names from Monument Mayor Mitch LeKind of 2 council members that want to stay engaged in this topic. And if anybody knows of others, as we help Penny build out a stakeholder and interested party list, please let Jody or I know. We're going to keep building that out. And I know that Penny's grant is focused on El Paso County. We know that the needs are acute across the entire region in Teller and Park as well. So the challenge is for us to try to figure out how to kind of expand the capacity as well. So that's definitely going to be on our radar.
Absolutely. We always look at opportunities across the region, but based on the specific funding and what's allowable, that does direct some of our resources resources, obviously, but the region is always at the heart of what we do, and ultimately rural rural conversations. I was in a discussion not too long ago, and there were questions, what should we be looking for specifically? And this was around expanded funding for aging projects. And I raised, we need to make sure that we're keeping in mind our rural areas. This was a Denver-centric conversation and group of folks that I was in, and there were a couple of us at the table who were waving our hands around the rural needs, and so that's always that just comes with the territory, literally with us based on our region makeup, and so we're happy to continue raising that flag, raising our hands, and making sure that we find opportunities.
Thank you very much. Pending any further questions or discussion? I don't see any hands online. Cami, your hand is still up. Did you have another comment? Okay, we'll just move on to the next information item, item B, air quality update. Andy Gunny.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And just wanted to take a couple of minutes to give you an update on two things. We had some really good conversations earlier this year, January, February, around our ozone challenges. And I got direction from the board, I think back in our latest conversation in February, to try to identify some other partners that we can work with some of the challenges that we're having, especially with the background ozone issue that we don't have a whole lot of control over, if any control, but also wanted to give a brief update and get some direction from the board on a grant possibility that's out there by EPA, and I'll dig into that here in just a few minutes. But starting with our ozone challenges, not going to do a deep dive into this, but these are some of the background slides that we presented back in January and February. We have to comply with federal EPA standards for ozone, ground level ozone emissions that go into our two monitors, and our two monitors have been showing numbers higher than the federal standard of 70 parts per billion. It's based on a 3-year average, so we're a little concerned about what this summer is going to look like. So that's been part of the conversation that we brought forward. Next slide, Jared. I think this gets into some of the challenges we identified where, sorry, one more time. Yep, thank you. Where some of those contributions go into our monitors really comes from a lot of different sources that we have no control over. The one column that's called initial and boundary conditions really is what exists out there today that would go into our monitors, even if we didn't generate anything within our region. So that could come from international emissions and just other locations that we just don't have any control over. And it's above 70%, as you can see. Other impacts like natural and wildfire influences are another 10% at the Air Force Academy and 9% at the Manitou Springs monitor, and so forth. And I should point out, these aren't actual emissions, but these are modeled numbers that EPA has come up with, but really kind of highlights the challenge that we have with how do we stay within the federal standard when we only control about 10% or maybe a little bit more than that of what we're generating as part of our overall numbers. So based on the last conversation we had in February, I've had a number of really, I think, positive conversations along with our air quality contractor, Dana Wojtek, and she may be online here as well, with a handful of different partners and different potential stakeholders where we can try to find some potential paths forward. Had good conversations with locally with Colorado Springs Utilities and with others at the state, at the federal level, and a group of metropolitan planning organizations that I'll talk about here in just a minute. And most recently yesterday with the folks that head up the Western Governors Association, because I think there's some synergy there as well. So just starting with first with EPA, and not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but Jared, if you can jump to the next slide. One chance that we had to do was highlight with our feds at EPA that we're doing a lot already to reduce and manage the emissions that we do generate within our region. We had to turn in a list of strategies under what's called our Ozone Advance Plan as part of an EPA program for regions like ours, for regions that are kind of close to the limit but aren't designated as non-attainment yet. We have to identify what we're trying to do to control what we have control over within our region. So we went through a really long laundry list of different items that we're working on already, and they said you're on the right path, you're doing what you need to do. So that was positive. shifting gears a little bit, but you can stay on the same slide, Jared. We had a really good conversation with our partners at the state level at CDPAG and the Air Pollution Control Division. Just last week, we met with the division director, Michael Ogletree, and his staff, and really wanted to make sure that they understood kind of the conditions that we're dealing with, especially on those first couple of slides, that, we're exceeding the limit. We're not non-attainment at this point, but there's only so much we have control over. And they get it. We were pleased to hear the conversation and the feedback we got from the state. They realized that maybe close to 90% of what we're dealing with is coming from sources that we don't have any control over. And they also highlighted, we didn't bring it up, but they said, yeah, we've been dealing with really unusual and difficult weather conditions over the past couple of summers. So I was really pleased to hear that. We wanted to make sure that that they weren't ready to take a hard approach with this and just point out that you're not meeting the standard, but getting the sense that we've got some good partners at the state that we can work with there as well. Another entity, another organization that we worked with, it's really not an organization, but sort of a loosely knit together group of metropolitan planning organizations across the Intermountain West states. We get together, John and I, and others get together with partners from our four corner states, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, plus a couple others in Nevada, Idaho, and Eastern Washington states, with our partners that deal with transportation planning and air quality planning. So it's the major metro areas in those states. So it includes places like Phoenix and Tucson in Arizona, Salt Lake City and Provo in Utah, Las Vegas, Reno, and a handful of other folks. So we put on the agenda a couple of weeks ago this very topic that, hey, it's something that we're dealing with in Colorado, especially within our region, this high level of background ozone, again, international emissions and wildfire emissions and others. And a lot of other regions are dealing with the same problem, the same dynamic, and they have been for a long time. Western states at a higher altitude and dealing with the climate conditions where it's drier and we're closer to the sun and we're dealing with hot, sunny days. It's something that all regions we've been dealing with for a while, but nobody really has has had a silver bullet solution for how to move forward. One idea that we've talked about is potentially doing something at the federal level, maybe around a study bill where we can identify what the magnitude of the problem is, and at least start putting a spotlight on just the magnitude of the emissions that we're responsible for, but we have no way of really kind of controlling that. So we're in the process of putting together a work group with these other regions and really start digging into this to see what might be needed and what different paths we have for going forward. So feel pretty promising there that we have some partners to work with. And then finally, I'll mention that finally had a chance to connect with the head of the Western Governors Association yesterday at a conference that dealt with a different topic, but this is something that's been on their radar as well. The Western Governors Association deals with about 20 states from, if you can visualize a map of the US, from the Dakotas down to Texas and all the states going west from there. So it's about 20 or so states. And I think I may have mentioned before, but they've adopted a policy resolution around this very issue, that a lot of states are dealing with high levels of background ozone, and Congress really needs to do something about it instead of having us as regions and states having to take it into account with our numbers. So I had a good but short conversation with the head of the Western Governors Group and his policy director, and told him, I've got a group of these MPOs throughout the Western states. We're interested in digging into this. Why don't we work together and see what we can do about that? So they've sort of opened the door that they're willing to work together and identify what are some possible ways we can partner here. So feel pretty promising about that. I think the last time we gave briefings back in January, February here, wasn't seeing a whole lot of possibilities going forward, but based on these conversations, I think we're actually seeing a little bit of promise moving forward. A lot of challenges still. Whatever we work up, it's going to require some federal support at some point, but I think we're seeing a little bit of some possibility there in moving forward. I think I may have mentioned before too that we're dealing with requirements under the Clean Air Act that hasn't been updated since 1990. Trying to emphasize with all of the partners we've been chatting with that the world's a much different place now than it was 33 years ago. So we just we need some help. We're doing what we can, as you can see with the measures that are on the screen, that we're doing within our region, but there's only so much that we can control. So I just wanted to bring that forward. I don't have a specific plan to move forward at this point, but we're going to keep having these conversations over the coming months and hoping that we're going to have some more concrete steps that we can take before too long here. So any questions on that before we shift gears to the grant possibility that that EPA has out there at the moment?
Councilmember Donaldson?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Is one possibility that the federal government regulation just recognizes that areas like Colorado Springs that sit a mile of elevation should not be held to the same standard that, an area back east at sea level with a bunch of trees should be held to? Or is that like off the table? Or is that something like the West could have a different standard than the East?
That's the very challenge. Just the fact that it's one standard that's applied across all 50 states and the other territories, and there really isn't that nuance of, dealing with different challenges in the West versus the East. And that's exactly what we're trying to highlight with whatever form our next steps take. If it's trying to build support around doing a background ozone study that really identifies the different challenges we're dealing with in Western states, maybe that potentially leads to a different standard that's in place, but no guarantees there. But yeah, we're starting from a much different place here than they are in, say, North Carolina and Virginia, and we need to highlight that. I think everybody recognizes that's sort of familiar with the air quality world, but there's no mechanism to deal with it right now.
Okay, and I've just forgotten. Can you remind me what the say in general the difference is in background ozone between out west, say here in Colorado Springs, where I think the slide had 71% is just pure background, and a city, a municipality back east? I don't remember off the top of my head. Do you?
I
What it
don't
was? How
recall.
much?
We can find out what the general background is for regions back east, but it's nowhere near. Pretty sure it's nowhere near what we're dealing with in the western higher altitude states.
Okay, it just seems like such a common sense thing to have different standards based on your environment. You just can't hold us and be like requiring us to have a certain temperature, but we're at a certain part of the United States where the temperatures just aren't that. So thanks.
Sure.
Commissioner Williams?
Yeah, and I had one comment. This is more Commissioner Vanderwerf's wheelhouse, but we like to take resolutions to our NACO summer conference, and we can certainly take a resolution and put it in front of the energy environment. And are you on that committee, Dick? Yeah. So Dick could take the resolution and put it there to change the standards for the Western. And so we could write a resolution, and our staff is certainly available after the legislative session ends to help with that. And then, we've also been talking about transportation solutions for the funding formula for the highway user transportation formula.
Yeah.
So,
very good. I appreciate that. And that's how these things need to get started, with a broad partnership base, and possibly doing something non-threatening to get started with, like I suggested, a study bill might be the right approach, just to document where we are. It's a slippery, difficult issue. And the risk of opening up the Clean Air Act is that standards could become more stringent, not less stringent for different parts. So we need to be careful and do something, I really think, on a non-threatening basis. But it also helps. The reason I wanted to bring up the list of different emissions reductions, things that we're doing already, it's important to emphasize that we're not trying to get out of our responsibilities. We're doing what we can, and we're trying to do more in a lot of different areas. We're committed to that, but we need some help. We're not going to be able to solve this by ourselves. Good.
All right, any further comments or questions? Councilmember Hinton?
Could somebody just explain a little bit more about the idle reduction policies? I'm very curious to know more about that.
And I'm not the expert at that, but found out that both the county and the city have policies in place, and I think they've been in place for a while, but it's really designed for, say, public works vehicles, public safety, and others. If you don't need to leave your vehicle running, don't leave it running for like 10 minutes, a half an hour, shut it off. And every little bit like that is going to help us. Right.
Not targeted to my son who sits in front of the house for 15 minutes with his car running.
Right. It's not an enforcement
Man,
thing with,
okay.
right, with private folks. It gets more at the public agency.
Okay,
police.
that's good.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
and I can take a guess at it. One is a joking guess. We don't allow our employees to be idle at all. at work. So
Yeah.
that's a good idle reduction policy. A couple of things El Paso County has done is we do allow our employees to work from home who are no longer on probation or needing in at the office. And this goes all the way down to even DHS employees who have access to 8 different secure databases. And so that's one thing. But then during COVID, we were able to get iPads or laptops or something for all of our transportation employees. And driving El Paso County can be quite big. So instead of having to drive 45 minutes to work and then drive 45 minutes out to the site, they can park their car out at the site and park the work car out at the site and log into work from the site and not be having to drive the big vehicles quite so far. So we've been trying to do more of that where we just leave vehicles on site where we're working.
Good to hear that. That every little bit helps. And maybe Jared, let's jump to the next slide because this is the other thing I just wanted to brief on and get some feedback to see about the board's appetite in supporting going after this grant possibility. It's around climate pollution reduction planning. It's been moving pretty fast and furious. I think the first initial guidance came out in February, but we really didn't learn about what the details were until the month of March. But basically, just going to kind of walk you through some of the basics with this. It's coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act and is a set aside of up to $3 million to each state and $1 million to the top regions based on population, the top 67 regions across the country. So there's enough money to fund the top 67 metro areas. We are at number 79, so we fell 12 spaces below the top 67 as far as population. However, we're moving up, not because we've grown since the guidance came out, but because a handful of states, 4 states, have declined their funding allocation. They're $3 million. So that funding is going to cascade down to other regions that are interested in participating in this. It's basically a planning grant that requires that a couple of plans be put together over the next couple of years and then follow that up with a status report. The initial plan is called a Priority Climate Action Plan that would be due next March 2024 and is designed to focus on near-term implementation-ready priority GHG reduction measures. The one kind of carrot that's part of this as well is there's money set aside for these planning opportunities, but the bigger funding that would come later, starting next year, is implementation grants, funding to be able to implement those projects that are identified in your plan that you come up with. And the guidance for the implementation grants, it's actually going to come out later this year, although the money wouldn't be available until sometime next year. So that's the first plan that would be required. A second one is a slightly deeper dive. It's called a Comprehensive Climate Action Plan that would be due in 2025, and it's to cover not just the short-term strategies we've already identified that we want to lean into further, but cover all other sectors that contribute greenhouse gas emissions within your region. And then finally, the third requirement is just a status report in 2027 to identify progress and next steps around key metrics. So some of the key dates that are coming up is all metro areas that are interested in potentially moving forward have to submit a notice of interest in participating by April 28th. And then we have to submit an actual application if we're interested. That includes a budget and a work plan by the end of May 31st. So I put in here that, if our region isn't funded for whatever reason, we decide not to move forward, or we want to move forward, but money doesn't drop down enough spots to be able to fund us, we could still participate through the Colorado Energy Office. They're going to take the lead on the statewide grant that they got. They're $3 million. So then I captured a few benefits from my perspective on us pursuing this if we decide to move forward. One is it demonstrates our commitment to manage our regional emissions, the stuff that we do generate, within our region. I think it's important to keep in mind with the second point that for the most part, most of the GHG reductions that we embrace are also going to help with ozone reductions too, whether it's travel reduction or the other ones that I mentioned in that previous slide. Funding availability, after the initial plan is put together, is available in 2024 for implementation grants. And then finally, just it gives us more control over our strategies that we want to put together as a region versus if we did end up partnering with the Colorado Energy Office, if there were partners across our region that wanted to go after implementation grants, they have to convince the Energy Office that the strategies that they want to pursue are consistent with the statewide policies. And we wouldn't have to do that necessarily if we did our own plan just within our region. So that's where we are with the 4 states that dropped out. We are now 7 regions below instead of 12 regions. So there's a good possibility, not a great possibility, but a good possibility, I think, that funding could become available if other metro areas decide to pass on their funding. So we've been encouraged by multiple partners, EPA, National Association of Regional Councils, and others, that if you're within sort of the top 100 of metro populated areas, that you really should put in forward if your region is interested in moving down this path. So
you just need kind of a nod of the head
A
from
head
us today if you'd
nod,
like us to go ahead and file the notice of.
Mhm.
I would much rather put, yeah, if we're going to have a plan, have it be where we're kind of in control of it than the Colorado Energy Office, who was at the Capitol in support of 213. So I'm not real happy with them right now. So Mayor Pro Tem Gardine.
I'd like to, I think, add one more thing to agricultural climate action plan for cow flatulence.
Cow flatulence, I'll soon.
Okay, never mind, sorry.
Callahan does have unique issues, don't they? Councilmember Donaldson.
Andy, which 4 states pulled out?
Oh, boy, I knew that last week. Florida,
Mhm.
Iowa, Kentucky, and a Dakota, and I forget which one, North or South Dakota.
They're both good.
All other states have opted, they had to opt in by March 31st. But yeah, there's 4.
So, I think I would, I'd like to, when we do it, let's do it as a vote when we just make our decision. I don't know if I want to voluntarily sign up for another system of essentially regulations or self-imposed regulations because we can get, $1 million from whichever organization this is, the EPA. I think we're doing everything we can. I can tell you, CSU is. We're being forced to do that right now with legislation from the state, including closing power plants and other things. I mean, the big lifting, I think, is being done, and we're not necessarily going to be dictated to by the state unless we were to pursue it through the state, correct? We don't have to participate with the state.
I believe that's correct, and I can find out for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just seems like we're voluntarily imposing more it's not even limitations, it's just forcing ourselves to do things. We're signing up for it. Maybe you can address that. Like what do you think we would propose if we were to agree to do this?
Well, I think, some of the measures, we're not like other parts of the state that are impacted by things like oil and gas. Our emissions that we do generate in our region, a lot of it comes from transportation, it comes from energy production. Those are probably the 2 biggies, especially transportation. So I could see maybe a big focus on helping with transportation, like travel reduction measures. It's one thing that we've been talking about as a group and with other stakeholders. How can we do a better job working with our major employers to let our employees know across the region about different options that are out there between transit, van pools, car pools, work from home policies, things like that. And I suspect there's probably a lot of help that we could seek there to kind of bolster the existing resource that we have in place. A lot of it's run by MMT, but we could always use some help in standing up additional van pools and working with, say, our military installations and major employers. So this could be one mechanism that could help us in that regard. That's kind of based on one that we've been talking about quite a bit and just trying to get our arms around as far as how do we do better there.
No.
Well, I'll just wrap up my comments then with, I just see this as us volunteering to have another outside regulatory agency kind of prod us along to do things which citizens in general don't want to do. So I'm interested to hear any other comments, but I think I'd be not in support of participating in this. Again, this is voluntary. We're doing it ourselves if we do this.
Commissioner Williams?
Yeah, Andy, you'll have to help me with this. There was a time back in the early 2000s when we had to do emission tests. And this organization would collect the emission fees because we were so far outside of our air quality. And I'm wondering what punitive stuff the EPA would come in and do if we got too high.
That's a good question. And we had to do emissions testing when we were in non-attainment for carbon monoxide for probably about a 20-year period. And that finally went away a number of years ago. So that's one potential threat that's out there with the ozone non-attainment designation, if that does happen, say a couple of years down the road. But just want to be really clear, this wouldn't involve anything like that. This would just be us preparing a plan, and then stakeholders, whether it's CSU or MMT and others across the region, if they have mitigation measures, reduction measures that they want to pursue, but not vehicle emissions testing, certainly, because we have no authority to do that. But if there are voluntary things that they think would help make a difference as far as driving down emissions, then this opens up the door for them to go after grants to help in that regard. If that helps.
So I guess I would speak in favor of applying for the grant. But it's primarily almost more out of fear. And unfortunately, that's the situation we're in right now with things such as this land use bill, which might affect our multimodal funds. If we're going to have another air quality bill that's going to come out, I guess it's more out of maybe we better apply for it just because we don't know what's coming around the corner next. And it might be helpful to have a little bit of an advanced step for a change on what the legislature might come up with.
Councilman Verhingen had her hand up first, and then I'll come back to you.
I'm in favor of pursuing it. I don't know why we wouldn't, given the benefits of demonstrating commitment to managing our regional emissions, which I believe we have. I would hope we have, regardless of what the state requirements or federal requirements might be, helping out with ozone. I'm reading from the slide. Funding availability after the plan is prepared in 2024 and giving us more control over strategies to pursue. Those look like good reasons to do it. Whether we're motivated by fear for some of us or by good intention for the benefit of our air quality, I don't see why we wouldn't want to do this. Thanks.
Commissioner Elsner?
Yeah, I, of course, live in Park County, so you guys have problems. I don't have problems. But I would look at this as a real advantage. Anytime you can get money to do planning, the biggest advantage in that is you can have stakeholder meetings to come up with that plan. So everybody that's out there that has good ideas that they're working on, it gets into the plan. So when someone comes along and says, we're going to make you do something, you say, well, we already have these issues. They've been identified. And it kind of sets them back a little bit. They can't say, well, you got to do what, we're already doing this and these are the plans that we have. So it brings up all of the good work that people are already doing when you create the plan. And, hopefully you can then convince them to kind of leave you alone because you're heading in a good direction.
Anybody else comments?
If I could, I believe organizations, CSU is a good example, already have plans. We're kind of being inundated with requirements to do things. And to me, this is one more program through which we're going to impose more requirements on on organizations, which are, it already, it's a task to keep up with it, for, personnel, at CSU. The benefits, at the bottom, I mean, what does that mean? Helps us with ozone too. What does that mean, Andy?
If we identify strategies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, carbon emissions under a plan like this, for the most part, those reductions are also going to help us as far as ground level ozone. There's co-benefits there with both
Yeah.
pollutants.
And I guess the point I'm trying to express is I think we're already doing that. We're being pushed to do that in multiple ways by the state and the federal government. And there are I think lots of opportunities if we want to do that for funding sources out there without, voluntarily signing up for one more. So thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to go around the room and kind of just get people's opinions because I think we have some differing ones here and I think that's okay. The one line that really jumps out at me, kind of in the middle of the slide, is this is a prerequisite for implementation grants. So if we have people that want to apply for some grants for maybe different things, I don't have any idea what they might be at this point. We don't want to be losing those because we didn't participate. So anyways, I'll start to my left here. And if you could just say support or oppose, I think that would be the easiest.
Support.
Okay.
And we're voting, right?
No,
Sharon, and we're
just
going to
that we're
record
not
it.
really voting because it's not an action item. At this point, we can make a motion and vote, but I think Andy was just kind of more wanting direction if you wanted him to even apply.
Yeah, and maybe one point of clarification too is this has been fast moving. And I realized it's not going to be something that fits in with everybody's wheelhouse, but I'm not doing my job if I don't bring opportunities like this forward for consideration. I think we just have to submit the initial letter of interest by the end of April and then an actual application, budget and work plan in May. So I would suggest we'll find out in early May if money actually fell down far enough to where we would actually get funded as a metro area. And if that's the case, I would come back and say May with what our application would look like and our budget and our work plan with the board to get some more feedback on, are we on the right path or not, as far as how we anticipate moving forward here. Then I would say if we also got funded down the road, whatever plans we have to come up with by next year and the year after are going to come back to this body as well for adoption. So if that helps.
So we're just on the notice of interest and participation. Right, so.
Oppose.
Elsner, you said support.
Oppose.
And if you could state your name for the record, please, before you say it.
Well, this is Commissioner Williams. If I could just,
if I will, I'll just say my name, Holly. So that was Councilman Donaldson opposed.
yeah, that was not Holly Williams. So, if you can't tell, our voices are different. This is Commissioner Williams. I'll just put it in a motion format because it looks like what we want to do is have PPACG express a notice of interest. And that's the only thing we're doing at this point. So I would move that we express, that we file a notice of interest.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for a notice of interest and participation. Do we have a second?
And Nancy Hingham seconds.
Councilman Hen, any further discussion?
And I will support my own motion. Then we can keep going around.
Well, we have a motion where I think we do it a little bit different once we have a motion on the floor. Is that correct, Mr. Elsner?
I think that is correct. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All righty. So now we have a motion on the floor and any further discussion on that motion to support the letter for notice of interest in participating?
Just one last comment. I mean, I think the ozone information, which our executive director gave us today, just sort of points out that 71% was background, up to 90% is not even, we can't even impact it with what we are doing locally. And that's, again, a problem with pursuing these kind of things beyond what what we sort of have to do by agreements we've already reached, is that we are really altering the rights and the ways our citizens, the people we represent, like to live their lives in pursuit of a tiny little fraction that we can impact. And I think just doing it because we want to get a little bit of well, we want to get some of the funding is a wrong thing to do. So, again, I'm ready for the vote.
All right, any further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Gardine?
Madam Chairman. Okay, I used to work for the National Bureau of Standards and NCAR and NOAA. Okay. Back in the day, man, whenever aerosol cans, man, affected the ozone layer and all that kind of stuff. But man, I'm actually for this due to the fact that we are actually going to be combating, man, the studies and that kind of stuff coming out of California and that region. And those people are really extreme radicals. And we need to know what our ducks are, have our ducks in a row to be able to look at it in a positive or negative way. So I think we need to actually have this study.
Thank you. I would like to say, though, not everything that comes out of California is extreme and radical, okay?
Oh, well, as they say, there's an exception to the rule.
That's right. All right, any further discussion? Okay, so Commissioner Williams, can I get you to just repeat your motion really quick since we've had some discussion?
My motion was just, right now we filed a notice of intent to participate. And then, start getting the information, and then actually the final decision as to whether to apply wouldn't even occur until May.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So we have that motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Mayor Dixon?
It sounds to me we probably ought to do a count.
I
We
was
got
gonna
enough.
say, I think we're gonna go around the room and do a voice vote, because that's kind of hard to tell with everybody being online or not. So I'll start to my left here, and if we could go really fast, Commissioner Elsner. And Andy, are you gonna keep track of this, please? Somebody keep track of this for me? Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Elsner?
Yes.
Councilmember Donaldson?
Nay.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Mayor Graham?
Yay, A.
Aye? Was that an aye?
Sorry, I, yeah.
Okay.
That was
Gardine?
Yes.
Dixon?
Aye.
LaKind?
No.
Hingen?
Aye.
Havenar?
Nay.
And you cannot vote? Okay. Avila?
Aye.
Okay, online? Do we still have Cammie Brimmer online?
Commissioner Bremer, yes.
Okay, is there any other elected officials online?
We do have Trustee Walker.
Trustee Walker?
Thank you. An aye from Trustee Walker in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. And the chair votes aye. And the tally, please?
I have 8 ayes and 4 nays. Does that square with what you have, Cheryl? Okay,
You have 9 ayes? Okay,
Okay.
I was an aye. Commissioner, raise your hand if you were an aye and you're in the room. Right.
Two online.
two of them.
We had 2 online that were yes, Commissioner Brimmer and Trustee Walker.
Correct.
There's still. Okay, looks like it's 9-4, but we have differing.
Well, she had 8-4. No, he had 8-4. She had 9-4.
Right.
He missed one.
Yeah, so we're.
Okay, 9-4,
9-4.
that carries?
Yes.
All right, for the notice of NOIP. There we go. Okay, a new acronym to add to our list of acronyms. Thank you, everybody, for the robust discussion. I love it. I think it's really, really great that we have these discussions. Okay, so we are on to item C, update on comprehensive economic development strategy SEDS. Mr. Roche?
We can make up for lost time. Paul is at an economic development conference this week. And I can just pass along. I know he's setting up a lot of meetings. We're making good progress with the economic development strategy /plan. meeting with folks across the region. I know he's in the process of setting up meetings in Teller County and also in Park County. So more to come on that. We have to be finished with our plan by the end of October, but making really good progress. So I'll have Paul give a more fulsome update next month.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. That takes us on to item D, AmeriCorps, AmeriCorps Vista, Laura Cruz.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Laura Cruz, Mobility Coordinator for PPACG, but I'm wearing a different hat this morning a little bit because it's not necessarily a transportation item, but have been working on this with Melissa Martz, who is in the AAA. We are actually seeking the opportunity to host 3 AmeriCorps Vistas at PPACG for a year, just to help us with different capacity needs that we have in terms of starting new programs that are centered around our strategic plan and also our newest adopted 4-year plan with the AAA. And so those 3 AmeriCorps Vistas, their positions that we're seeking is actually a person to work within the AAA on volunteer recruitment and volunteer program planning. Someone up in transportation to help us with safety education programs. And then lastly, a Vista volunteer to help us out with general COG activities. And what that means is just different things. Andy just brought up the point of the economic development plan, different things that we may need from a general purpose of helping us move forward some of these new strategic initiatives that we're working on. So bringing to you just an information item that, hey, this is something that's going on at PPACG. The AmeriCorps Vista program is the Domestic Peace Corps program. So it is a federal program, and it offers mostly young people who are just transitioning out of college and wanting to do kind of a gap year to be able to be hosted at a community organization to help with capacity needs of that organization. And so I myself have been a Vista coordinator at my previous job at the food bank in Chattanooga. Melissa Martz was actually a Vista herself right out of college. And so we have some experience here in the room working with that program. So I just wanted to present to you guys today the opportunity that we've been going after. We should have noticed that we have received our thumbs up from the AmeriCorps program to host these guys. And then we'll start doing our recruitment here at the end of May to bring some Vistas on in our area. These are volunteers, but they are volunteers that are dedicating a year of their life to serve within a community-based organization. So any questions for me on that?
Laura, can these volunteer hours count towards the AAA hours that we need that we were severely lacking in the last year?
That's a great question. We actually asked that of AmeriCorps, and they said that we need to work with our state unit on aging of whether that's an acceptable in kind. So we're still working through that. However, what's kind of bolster us, even if it isn't a possibility, is one of the individuals that we're seeking for is a volunteer coordinator to help us start more of these volunteer type of programs to not only, help us with our in-kind, but more importantly, help those in the community that really need it. Great question.
Thank you. And for those of you that don't know, can you just really very quickly explain why those volunteer hours are really, really vital to us as the agency?
Yes, great question. So our grants that we administer all require a match. And that match can come from local dues. Most of the transportation grants, the match comes from local dues. But for the AAA programs that we administer, we really heavily rely on in-kind, volunteer hours, the hours that you guys put in, the hours that our RAC members put in, that's the Regional Advisory Committee, the hours that the Mobility Coordinating Committee put in. And those volunteers that help us with guiding our organization are so vital so that we can meet those match requirements and access all the funding that's available to us.
So that they're really important.
Yes.
Rather than having to lay out real dollars, we can use those volunteer hours.
Yes.
So very important. Okay, thank you. And Roland?
Is that 50% grant? What? You said match grant.
Oh, so the AmeriCorps Vista program, there is no match requirement for us. But different grants that we administer, so the Area Agency on Aging grant that we administer, it has anywhere, depending upon funding pots, and Jody can correct me if I'm wrong, 25% to 10% match requirement, depending on the program that's being administered.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
All right.
Did I get it right? Oh, thumbs up.
All right, thank you.
So,
All right, any other questions or comments?
Can I go for 1%?
well, I would never ask for more match requirement. So,
I will share too that our in-kind numbers are climbing.
Good.
Because more people are coming in, we can also claim mileage that those volunteers drive from whether they're home or their work to our office for those meetings. We can claim those as well. So we budget our in-kind volunteer information just like we might budget actual dollars. And so when we can use those in-kind, just like Mayor Thompson mentioned, when we can use in-kind from our volunteer use versus dues from what your municipalities pay into the COG, then we use that first. We work very closely with Carol, our finance manager, to make sure that we're keeping at an appropriate budget level, because some of the programs do have within AAA at least have that 25% versus 10%. And so our providers themselves actually provide that as part of their grant process. But because of our services, we have ours that we have to pay as well. So we're able to balance that out with our volunteer time. So a huge part of that was our 4-year area plan, and so many volunteer hours and miles incorporated into that. So this year we're actually looking pretty good for our in-kind, but we're always making sure that we calculate those where we can. So.
All right, thank you very
And this
much.
VISTA program, specifically on the AAA side, is really about outward facing volunteer opportunities where people in the community can volunteer to serve. So kind of a neighbor to neighbor type program. And so we're really excited about that. We have our own volunteers here within our immediate services, as well as our boards and our hotline with the Yellow Book information and assistance. But this is really a program that's going to be built that will be outward facing to serve the community. So we're really excited for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And please, if they're here on a board meeting day, be sure you bring them in and introduce them.
we will.
Okay, thank you. All right, that takes us on to item 6E, strategic plan, work plan, quarterly report. Mr. Gunning?
We will keep this super brief as well. And just I'll highlight a couple of things. We're going to get back into a better practice of doing a quarterly update back to the board on what we are doing as far as work plan, strategic plan progress. We were doing that really well. And then when we lost Jessica McMullen last year, it kind of fell off a little bit. So we're picking that up and making sure we're reporting back. Just a couple of things I'll mention real quick, kind of key highlights from the first quarter of this year. Finished up our AAA 4-year plan that the board adopted just last month, making really good progress on the plan I just mentioned, the SEDS comprehensive economic development strategy, making great progress on our long-range transportation plan. Kick off with a bunch of different studies that are feeding into that effort. We were able to launch the Grant Navigator program and get our Grant Navigator starting to get out there in the community to meet with our local jurisdictions to start identifying project needs. And then kind of overlaying everything is just a ton of legislative activity that we talked about earlier this morning. Just so those items and a ton of other stuff that's in your packet, but just those are some of the key highlights from the first quarter.
Great, thank you very much. That takes us on item 7. Most of them are either minutes in your board packet or not this month. So item H, CDOT monthly update.
All right, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. CDOT will start off with we are having a Remembrance Day event tomorrow. It's our time of the year where we remember our staff that we have lost in the line of duty. Within Region 2, over the years, we've lost members, with the last one being in 2009. This Remembrance Day aligns with our National Work Zone Safety Week, which will be next week. It is April 17th through the 22nd. This year's motto is, "You can play a role in work zone safety, work with us." And so as we begin our construction season, please be aware, slow down, avoid being distracted, and watch out for our guys and gals that are working in the work zone. After that, a few additional updates. Wanted to announce that we have a new planning manager. Jeff Guthrie within the region has been promoted to be our planning manager, where Wendy Pettit was recently. And so Jeff Guthrie was our transit liaison previously. So many of you may have worked with him in the past. So he had started this week. And so you'll see him within PPACG as well. And then lastly, we promoted John Hall as our new North Program Engineer. He's been with CDOT for over 20 years. He's stepping into my previous role as program engineer. And so welcome both John and Jeff, if you will, to CDOT's new roles within PPACG. With that, I'm going to turn it over to John to provide the program project updates that I used to do.
Thanks for having me. And many of you have been occasionally to these meetings, although I've been occasional. Thanks for having me, John Hall again. Met many of you, a lot of you back in 2018 with the GAP project when I was assigned shortly back to Region 1, but I've been here in Region 2 since 2015. Just real quickly on projects, I'll start with some of the mountain projects, but that do affect a lot of the communities here. So of interest, the State Highway 9 and 285 project, of course, there in Fairplay will kick off in the next like 30 to 60 days here with work there, rebuilding the bridge and the major intersection there in the heart of town. Along with that, also on Highway 24, right through Woodland Park, we have an overlay project. Starts about 5-6 miles east, goes through town and 3 miles west. So that also be kicking off here in the next 30 days, really kicking off any day now in terms of some ADA work and things like that. A few other projects, just smaller projects around about 10 miles further west there of Woodland Park. We're going to be doing a correction on mostly a sharp curve that is particularly for the eastbound traffic. Improving the radius and improving the sight distance by blasting out some of the cliff along that. Also in Teller County, we have about 10 miles south of Divide, about 4 miles outside of Cripple Creek. We're going to have a pullout being constructed for southbound. And just that project happens to be the last project I'll probably ever design. So that's just a fun little fact for me, but also an improvement about 10 miles north of Woodland Park, also another curve correction, blasting out some cliff face, and where we've had a multiple motorcycle fatalities. It's actually just across the Douglas County border, but State Highway 67 there. So I think that covers most of the rural ones of interest of this group. I'm sure also, yes.
Dick Ellsner, Park County, you've got bridge replacement that is going on 24 between Hartselle and Antero Junction starting the 17th, because I got the memo. Do not drive there. The road will be closed, so you're going to have to go through Fairplay.
Absolutely. That is multiple locations up there in Park County, the bridge project. Yeah, absolutely. And as you just mentioned, a significant detour there on 24, basically closed south or along the south side of Antero Reservoir using 9 and 285 as the detour. Thanks, Commissioner. Yes. Other projects certainly of great interest to you all. Now coming back towards the city, what are going to be the Fillmore Garden of the Gods improvements, safety and operational improvements on I-25. So we're looking to advertise that here in June. Everything seems to be all lines go. And I mean, incidentally, we might have a few things in your next board meeting just to tweak make sure the funding is just right in line with between the tip and the STIP. But otherwise, that project is looking really good to advertise there in June.
Can you remind us what that entails? Is that the expansion of the lane?
Well, it's a continuous auxiliary lane
Yep.
between Garden of the Gods and Fillmore in both directions, one
Yep.
in each direction. It's going to, in the construction aspect of it, it's going to be largely widening to the center, putting in a center median and using that area to, center barrier, using that to get the space in the pavement. We're also reconstructing the Elston Bridge, of course,
Mhm.
as part of that.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I think that'll be a big improvement on traffic flow through there. So we're looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
We are too, for sure. And just the last, I'll just highlight too, of course, MAMSIP, because I jumped into free design, but MAMSIP and the Highway 115 project, 10 miles of Highway 115 along the west side of Fort Carson. They're starting about 5 miles south of Academy Boulevard. Both of those projects are ongoing. The MAMSIP project will be doing a major traffic shift of northbound here in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So that'll free up and give us the space then to really fully do all the work associated with northbound. And on a final note too, the kind of last 10-year capital plan project that's on this kind of list to discuss is the Powers and Airport project. So that project is also progressing very well. It's not quite as advanced as the Fillmore to Garden of the Gods, but we were intending on advertising it just about a month or so behind there this summer for sure.
Councilmember Avila?
Yes. How far, I'm back to South Academy and 115, how far north on South Academy does that project go?
The 115 project starts about 5 miles south of Academy and goes 10 miles further to the south. It's along Fort
Further
Carson.
south?
The MAMSIP project does include some South Academy work. That's the El
Where?
Paso County portion. It's basically from I-25 and South Academy, and it's a few miles to the east. Is the bulk of that work.
Essentially goes to Milton E. Proby.
Yeah.
Parkway is the limits of the South Academy El Paso County project. It's in
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Cause project all the way to Drennan Road, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're very well aware of those programs, that construction. And I was going to actually ask the question if CDOT and PPRTA had kind of coordinated that mess.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Then one more update I'll give. Bailey Curve. I know Commissioner Eldner is interested in that. We will open bids on that project tomorrow. And so we're excited to see. We've had some contractor interest asking us questions, so we know they're out there. But we'll see what it does tomorrow. I'll let you know.
All right, any other questions for John on anything going on? Anybody online? No? All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you very much. All righty, that takes us to the stack update.
Yes, so we had our meeting last Thursday. We've been surprised a couple times by some legislation. And so the first bill we talked about was House Bill 1101, which would have initially moved Summit County or Eagle County into a different rural planning region. I would say it's fair to state that stack is pretty much sometimes a fight between the rurals and the urbans.
Yeah, I think the idea, it's not really Summit and Eagle. They like each other. It's
Mhm.
Garfield County out further west is part of the Summit and Eagle. And that was the impetus behind trying to figure out how to redraw the transportation regions. I always say that I love my transportation regions, so leave
Yeah.
us alone. But you could fix rural, I-70, Garfield, Eagle, and those guys.
Well, and it kind of came out of the blue. Even the Transportation Commission wasn't notified of it. It was introduced one day and stuck in there because someone in the department thought it would be a good idea. So we had a few choice words. I apologize. I had a few words to say about that. And so now that's whole bill has been turned into a study, which needs to happen probably anyway. And the study will not reduce the rural planning regions. The thing that we want to make sure is we still keep Park close to us. And of course, our MPO which is mainly Colorado Springs area monument, a little itty bitty falcon. Manitou is federally set by statute, is set in federal statute, so that will not change. And that study will be completed by November of 2023. So that's one thing we will start working on. And then the other thing we're starting on next month is the 10-year plan. We're going to probably spend the whole day up there discussing the different funding sources, which ones are very easy to place into boxes, and then the ones that we get to argue over. And at least the plan was that. We also talked about the land use bill, but by the time we got to that, most of the rural, many of the rural county commissioners who would speak well to sticking transportation in the land use bill had already left to sign up at the Capitol. So we'll just keep working on that and see what comes out of that land use bill. And I think this time next month, the session will be out. So we can hopefully breathe a sigh of relief.
Okay, thank you very much. Andy, Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just 3 items real briefly. One, I'll mention through the AAA, we're going to send out a notice of funding availability and an RFP solicitation around the ARPA funding that I know that Jody's briefed you on before. We have roughly, what, $1.3 million? 1.7 total, sorry, underestimated there, but it's for senior services, for capacity building, infrastructure needs to really just be able to build out our support for our senior community with fewer strings attached as far as requirements. So it's a pretty broad RFP. So that'll be going out later this week, I think today, actually. Thank you. And I will send a notice out to the board so you're aware as well that we're pushing that out. So just wanted to let you know once bids come back in and it works through its process to identify who and which projects should be funded, that'll come to the board, obviously, for final decision in May, June timeframe, somewhere in that timeframe. Yeah. So more to come there. Second thing I'll mention real quick, and I sent an email out on this a couple of weeks ago, but I'll follow up and send a reminder out. We've got a survey out there that went out to board members and our city, town, and county managers around doing some coordinating some training opportunities. It really came out of conversations with the city, town, and county managers. We get together on a regular basis, and they identified that there's a real strong need to do some more training down here versus going up to Denver for, say, CML conferences and the like. If we can do something more localized being down here, but with our local jurisdictions and around a whole variety of different topics around building an effective council or commissioner base, keeping your jurisdiction out of trouble by complying with open meeting laws requirements and risk and liability issues and things like that. Had a whole host of different topics that the city, town, and county managers really identified that we could really benefit from with some more detailed training. If we can get our jurisdictions together and get the right speakers in, that we see that as a really good opportunity. So hoping to pull together at least one training session around one of these topics later this year. Going to take a little bit of work. We can't do it on our own, so really rely on our jurisdictions and our city managers to kind of help out here as well and identify the right topics and speakers and so forth. But the survey I'll send out is a link to identify what are the priorities from your perspective that you think we ought to focus on. We got some really good feedback already, but I'll push that out again, and we're looking for
painless. It takes like less than 5 minutes. So
exactly. Yeah, we just want some good, fulsome feedback. And I should mention also that whenever we do hold a training or a workshop, it's going to be not just for our board members, but all the representatives from your council or trustees or what have you. So really good opportunity. So I'm glad we've been talking about that with the city managers. Last thing I'll mention, on a sad note, we're sorry to see her go, but Barb Watson, our HR manager, announced her retirement coming up in September. And she's been with us for 23 roughly years, I think. Has been through a lot with us, helped us through a bunch of different transitions and whatnot. So yeah, so really pleased that she gave us enough advance notice to start advertising for a new HR person here at PPACG. So we're going to get the notice out, or actually might be out already, so we can get some crossover training before she hangs it up after a really long and successful career. Great run here at PPACG. So Barb will be riding off in the sunset in September. So that's all I've got, unless you have any questions.
all right, thank you very much. And that takes us to member entity announcements. Does anybody have anything? Dixon?
Yeah, in May, I'll be testifying on behalf of the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department against Regulation 28. It's something that is coming out that applies to buildings 50,000 square feet or more. The exceptionally troubling part to me is the economic impact assessment. It just, the politically correct term is I can't really connect the dots. It is very troubling, especially when the base document that they started from the Department of Energy shows about 72% of the items that you can do to help a building's efficiency are actually a negative net present value. And then in that same document, they created a fictitious building that took, a handful of there were only 10 that were net positive values. So they took a handful of those and they said, here's how much money you can save on this fictitious building. And I'm really concerned that they took that number and used it as a baseline to try to do the economic impact assessment for this.
Great. Thank you for doing that. Commissioner Elsner?
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize for helping with your ozone issue, adding ozone, smoke and all of that. We did have the fire in Park County. It was 1,500 acres. It was almost all grass. That area has pockets of trees and it went around pretty well. Lost absolutely no structures and we didn't have any injuries. So.
All right. Anybody else? Nancy Hingham?
You all may know that next Tuesday, City Council will be swearing in 4 new council members, 3 at large and 1 District 3. They are Brian Risley at large, David Lineweber at large, Lynette Crow-Iverson at large, and Michelle Tallarico for District 3, and a mayoral runoff, which ballots likely to go out April 21st with a May 16th election and a runoff between Wayne Williams and Yemi Mobilati.
Well, I hope you guys can do something to increase that voter turnout. It was like 18%.
Actually, I think it ended up being 25 was, no.
No,
35.
it's 35.
We had 30,000 votes the last day.
Oh, my goodness.
33.
Wow. Okay.
And there's a big range through the city too. Like District 1 was like 43% voted.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to see it run up because we want to see more people get out and vote and participate.
Absolutely. And a reminder that those will also be seated as the Board of Directors for CSU utilities. And that meeting will happen the day after, so a week from today.
So the swearing in is at 10 a.m., correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yolanda?
Oh, I was going to mention the same thing as Nancy did.
Okay. Just one thing from the city of Fountain, and unless anybody has anything else, then I'll end the meeting. Several of us are going up tomorrow. The state is doing a resolution in honor of Officer Becerra. That would be first thing in the morning. So if you want to join in on that online, that would be appreciated. And also the RTA survey results that we did in terms of potentially putting it on the ballot in Fountain were released last night to the council, and they will be online today. So if you'd like to go online and look at that and see the comments and various things at that survey. But the bottom line is, after education, about 59% of the people said that they would vote yes on it. So we have a decision to make on whether we're going to put it on the ballot or not. So, but it'll be interesting to read through the comments, and that's always good. So that is available. So barring any further comments, 11:09. This meeting is adjourned. There is immediately following this, the transportation workshop, the 101 continuation. So we'll take a 5-minute break, and then I'm handing the gavel over to Commissioner Elsner to run that meeting because Councilmember Avila and I have another meeting to attend.